This is a Rubik's Cube. You've probably heard of these or seen these, you might even own one. They are possibly the most iconic toy or puzzle in all of human history. Today we're going to learn all about the history of the Rubik's Cube, but before we do that, let me give this one a quick solve. Now, I know that jump cut's cheating. In fact, I didn't actually solve this one, I have two. But I really can solve it, and so I'm going to go ahead and solve this Rubik's Cube up close and personal while we talk about the history of how this came to be. The Rubik's Cube was invented in 1974 by a Hungarian sculptor and architecture professor named Erno Rubik. It's a common misconception that he created this toy as a learning tool to help his students understand 3D objects. In reality, he wanted to solve the structural problem of having moving pieces without the mechanism falling apart. In fact, he didn't even realize he had created a puzzle until he mixed up his cube and then couldn't put it back together. It took him about a month to figure out how to solve this first cube, and during that time he realized he had struck some magic here. And so he filed a patent for a magic cube in January of 1975. The first test batches of Rubik's Cubes released in Budapest toy shops in 1977. In 1979, a business partner of Rubik's took it to a Nuremberg toy fair where it caught the eye of a company called Ideal Toys. In 1980, they rebranded it to the Rubik's Cube to make it more recognizable and started selling them internationally. The initial release of the Rubik's Cube saw modest sales. They weren't great, they weren't terrible. And so Ideal Toys began a strong television campaign supplemented by newspaper advertisements. By the end of 1980, the Rubik's Cube had won Germany's Game of the Year award, as well as similar awards in Paris, London, and the United States. By 1981, the Rubik's Cube had become a craze, and it's estimated that about 200 million cubes were sold from 1980 to 1983. In March of 1981, the Guinness Book of World Records organized the very first speed cubing championship, which became a worldwide phenomenon, and in 1982, the very first worldwide championships were held. The winning time in 1982 was just under 23 seconds. Today, the world record is held by Lu Shengdu, who is just under 3.5 seconds. So we've come a long way. By October of 1982, sales had dropped significantly, and the New York Times reported that the craze was over. In 1983, it became clear that sales probably would not jump up to the original numbers they had been. However, interestingly enough, sales went up in places like China, the USSR, and Cuba, where their communist governments were hesitant to allow anything trendy in the West to enter into their country. So despite sales going down worldwide, there was still pretty significant demand in those three countries, and there was even a Rubik's Cube shortage. Rubik's Cubes continued to be sold at relatively low numbers throughout the entire 1980s and 90s, but saw another spike in the early 2000s. In fact, sales of Rubik's Cubes doubled in the United States from the years 2001 to 2003. Because of this, in 2003, the Speed Cubing Championships were held for the first time since 1982. Now, at first glance, that could seem like a pretty significant increase in popularity, until you realize only 83 people showed up to those championships. Despite low attendance, however, the World Cube Association was founded in 2004, and popularity continued to rise since then. No one really knows why Rubik's Cubes became popular again, but there are two prevailing theories. The first is that websites like YouTube allowed people to share their solving methods on the platform, which got a ton of people interested and drove sales up. The second reason is that Rubik's patent ran out in the year 2000, and so a bunch of very cheap Chinese cubes flooded the market. And that's not entirely a bad thing. In fact, most of these Chinese cubes are engineered for speed cubing. You may have noticed that my cube has corners cut out to make it easier to turn multiple sides in rapid succession. Some of the fancier options on the market even have magnets that stop your sides from overturning when you're going really fast. The good news of all of this is that people like me who want fast, cheap Rubik's Cubes can get them. The bad news is that Erno Rubik doesn't make a single cent off of the Rubik's Cube craze. Okay, I shouldn't say a single cent, but he makes almost no money from the Rubik's Cube craze. In fact, in November of 2016, Rubik lost a 10-year-long legal battle as he attempted to trademark the Rubik's Cube itself. However, he was able to trademark the Rubik brand. This means he can make money off the Rubik's Cube craze as long as people are buying Rubik branded toys. So if you want to support the 78-year-old creator of the most iconic toy in all of history, make sure to buy Rubik branded cubes. Just be aware that the Rubik's branded cubes are widely accepted to be the worst ones on the market. So next time you pick up a Rubik's Cube to solve it, play with it, or next time you see one in a TV show like Stranger Things, don't just think of it as a colorful toy and a fun, mind-engaging puzzle, but think of it as an interesting piece of global history that has earned its place, not only in the world's economy, but in all of our hearts. On that corny note, thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.